Before the Greeks, before the Romans, before the Vikings, Celts, Persians, Thracians and Scythians, there were a group of people so ancient and mysterious that we don't even know their name. That's not hyperbole, by the way. We seriously don't, because next to nothing of their culture remains. Besides the legacy they left as the precursors to much of Eurasian civilization, they are the Proto-Indo-Europeans, or as we prefer to call them, Pi. From their early origins, dating back to the 4000 millennia BCE, they expanded from the Danube basin to cover large swaths of Eastern Europe. By the time of their collapse in the mid-2nd millennium BCE, they had become influential in most of the modern Balkans, Italy, and parts of Germany. Aspects of Pi culture, language, and religion can be seen in many ancient civilizations, most notably the Mycenaeans and the Hittites. For more information, please watch our previous video on the origins of Uranus.
But who are they? What happened to them? And how did this culture come to be? Despite its immense influence on European history, very little is actually known about this society by the vast majority of people, something that we consider to be a great shame after having jumped headfirst into its convoluted and curious past. Now, after spending possibly a little too much time researching them, we have compiled an almost complete guide on the Proto-Indo-Europeans.
This is Compass Mentis, and today we want to answer the question, who on earth were the Proto-Indo-Europeans?
Well, the short answer is, it's complicated. And the long answer is that Pi aren't one continuous culture. It's a more general term that encompasses various civilizations across Europe and Asia, starting in the Copper Age, the awkward middle child of stone and bronze, and going up into the 2nd millennia. Amongst the various potential precursors to the Pi people are the likes of the Sredni Stog, the Corded Ware civilizations, the Anatolians, the Danube Valley civilizations, the Bel-Beka culture, and, most importantly for this video, the Yamnaya. The common denominator for all of these groups is the Pi language, as well as an organised social structure based around hobbies like ceramics, fishing, smithing, rearing animals, and, of course, murder. Mostly murder, actually, since their main exports to the other cultures in Varna were literally giant stone maces. In fact, it's believed that a central cult amongst Pi traditions literally worshipped weapons, like daggers and swords, which is both the craziest and the most metal thing I've ever heard. But the two things that they're known best for, besides a penchant for warfare, is the domestication of the horse and their use of burial chambers known as kurgans, where important individuals were buried in their own cosy little hills, surrounded by their precious horses and their even more precious weapons. But all this information still doesn't give us a clear picture on where they came from. To truly understand this Bronze Age civilization, we need to move approximately 4,000 years after their collapse to meet the researcher Maria Gimbutas, a Lithuanian archaeologist studying Bronze Age civilizations in the Ukrainian region of what was then the USSR. She's the creator of the first widely accepted theory on the Pi people and their origins, the Baker, if you will, and she penned the Kurgan hypothesis. This theory posits that the Pi people proceeded from the Pontic steppe to populate the present region of Kurgan in Ukraine. This was facilitated by the Yamnayan people, the name of the culture that had travelled from Anatolia to Kurgan and brought with them many Proto-Indo-European beliefs and ideas. From here, the Yamnayan people populated regions all down the Danube basin throughout the 4th millennium BCE, using the development of horse domestication to quickly travel and overwhelm the local Neolithic civilizations that had previously inhabited Europe.
Gimbutas posits that the Pis experienced three main ages: the early Pi, migrated along the Danube and Volga rivers; the middle Pi,
baked Pi,
saw the emergence of the Yamnayan culture and the mass expansion of Pi culture; and the late Pi, saw Pi culture fracture and develop individual identities as it grew too large to maintain itself as one homogeneous identity. It is important to note that this shift occurred over 2,000 years, with each period lasting approximately 500 years in their own right, and none of these events happened instantly. Eventually, come the end of a period known as the Yamnayan Horizon, which lasted from 3500 to 2600 BC, the Yamnayan people saw a cultural decline and were replaced by early Bronze Age civilizations such as the Mycenaeans in Greece. So there we go, the Pi people travelled from the Kurgan steppe to the rest of Europe, developing over the course of 2 millennia before eventually collapsing under their own weight and developing into the ancient cultures we all know and love.
Apart from the small problem that horses wouldn't actually be domesticated in Europe until 2200 BC, about 300 years after the Pi culture had already collapsed.
Son of a...
Yeah, at this point Mentis had spent about 5 hours researching how great the horse-riding Yamnayans were and how they absolutely had to be the cause of the Pi. But now we've come to the realisation that unless the Yamnayans had somehow magicked their way into getting enough horsepower to conquer all of Europe, this was all but impossible.
Therefore, we had to find a new reason as to why Yamnayan culture was so successful in Europe without the aid of domesticated horses. To this effort, we must attribute the helpful research of Leiden University and their diligent mapping of the spread of horses throughout Europe during the early Bronze Age.
The conclusion that we came to after reading Leiden's paper, which will be linked in the description with all of our other sources, was that the most likely cause of the Yamnayan people's success was the decline of European Neolithic populations prior to the Yamnayan horizon. Due to the overall lack of a permanent population in Europe, the Yamnayans would have had an easy time migrating, settling and developing in the Danube and Volga regions. From here they could have developed the hill forts during their middle period, creating sedentary communities and developing regional economies built around fishing and pottery. Then, as domesticated horses came into the picture during the late 2nd millennium BCE, the Yamnayans could have fractured as regional nobilities built up due to the addition of a new status symbol, the horse. And as longer distances became easier to traverse, the ancient scourge of regional trade would have awoken, fracturing them into competing local identities unique from that of the Yamnayan culture. And that would have all but doomed them, making its fracturing at the end of the Yamnayan horizon practically inevitable.
There's also the Anatolian theory by Colin Renfrew, which posits that the Pi evolved in Anatolia and then expanded westwards into the Balkans and what he calls Old European culture in the 7th to 5th millenniums BCE. This theory is plausible, as it follows the natural spread of agriculture and farming into the West, hypothesizing that as farming migrated into Europe, so too did the languages of those that practiced it. Furthermore, studies by Russell Gray and Quintin Atkinson provide statistical evidence for this theory, stating that the Pi split during the 9th and 7th millenniums BCE, which coincides with the Neolithic Revolution and the development of sedentary agriculture in Europe. The belief is that Proto-Indo-European languages expanded peacefully, via cultural homogenization and mass migrations rather than warfare, like in its Kurgan counterpart. It does, however, face criticism due to the validity of its Kurgan competitor, and differences in languages like Albanian that it cannot explain.
It is important to note that a nation-state like that which we would see today would have never existed within Yamnayan society, with nationalities as a whole being a more modern concept. As societies within the Yamnayan sphere of influence became more unique, conflict would have become more common between them, and then individual cultures developed separately from their Pi origins. Thus, the Pi had been eaten.
In the end, the true story of the Pi is yet to be fully understood. What we have told you here are only a few of many hypotheses about just how this prehistoric culture developed, grew, and eventually fractured. What we can be sure on, however, is that without them and their migration into Europe, history as a whole would have shaped out very differently. Their rise, growth, and fall over the span of 2,000 years helped shape the cultures of some of the most influential Bronze Age societies like the Mycenaeans and the Hittites, having knock-on effects that would eventually result in modern European societies almost 6,000 years after the rise of this first common ancestor. So, whilst much of their culture has been lost to time, it's clear that the legacy of the Pi lives on.
Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed it, please stick around. We've got big plans to really up the quality and the frequency of our uploading. It'll take some time, but we're getting the hang of it, and your support is greatly appreciated.
Whatever the case, thank you for watching, and we hope to see you again soon.
My Proto-Indo-European Pi, they came surging from the Kurgan, but then they all died. We tried rhyming with Yamnayan, but it's awfully dry. First to get on their horses and ride, but may have actually been the cause of their own decline. That was stupid.
It was very gravelly, but I last time it was Devunavum. We're recording all of this.
I know. I think it's funnier to end on this rather than the singing.
I see.